Hello guys, Yuki again. We're gonna react to some content. The first video we're gonna react to is we all got tricked into content addiction. I think one of the main reason is that no, we don't like being bored for sure. I think that's like one of the main thing that he might be talking about is that we humans don't really like to be bored. And in this day and age where anything is available to us, especially with 5G that is slowly becoming available worldwide, it's so easy to get access to information. Anything you want to know about almost anything, you can get it. And I think that's the reason why we are constantly always stimulated. Because there's so many things we can get. Even if we are not going out of our way to get it, the information comes to us. And I think that's like one of the things that he's probably going to tackle in this video.
Probably more. So when I say we, I do mean we. So how did we get here? Why can't we experience a moment of silence without being overwhelmed by anxiety? Why do we always need to be watching or listening to something? What happened?
See? What happened? When did silence become annoying? There's this question about, I think we all have seen in social media, in TikTok, etc., about detoxifying your social media habit, detoxifying your dopamine receptors. It's such an interesting content that has been appearing over the years and is starting to become like I don't know, trend, detoxifying, going out into the wilderness to like detox your receptors. Does that really mean we have made one full circle? We went from someone who have to wait for like 10 seconds for a web page to load up because we're using like those dialers, which I actually used a few years back, to having high-speed internet that loads web pages with so much information and content within milliseconds. And now we want to sort of go back to that era. Kind of like, are we making a full circle? I think that's a very interesting question and topic to think about.
The whole dopamine hit thing is the quickest explanation and one that you may be thinking of right now. Before I started making this video, I assumed it to be true, but turns out, while still relevant, the idea of a quick dopamine fix is kind of a myth, and we'll get into that and a whole lot more.
Technically get used to it. It's like a caffeine addiction, right? You get used to it. Detoxifying you doesn't mean you're completely free of the addiction. Or maybe he's trying to say that these type of things takes years to like so-called reset. It doesn't take like a week to reset or something like that.
See, the truth has to do with a misunderstanding about dopamine, decreasing attention spans, and a huge failed promise. If things are difficult now, where are we going with all of this? Can new forms of stimulation just keep appearing forever to compete for our attention?
I think that's a very interesting question that he came up with. And I do think the answer to that is yes. We'll always be constantly overstimulated. Like think about it, YouTube. When Mr. Beast became popular, right? That's when so-called the overstimulation quote unquote happened, right? And ever since then, people have been asking, people are still talking about overstimulation, which means, right, aside from Mr. Beast, there's probably other content creators, which I know, have made YouTube into such a interesting place to make content. Last time it used to be you press the record button, send it through Windows Movie Maker or something, or send through a pirated version of Sony Vegas, and then export it. Or sometimes you even do like a one take and then you just export it, not even caring. Now we have reached to a point where videos are like movies or like TV shows, but more than that, they're overly cut, edited, they're overly filtered. The characters in the videos are overly personified. It's such an interesting thing that we went from such a humble beginning to like the loud equals to funny era to the MLGs and stuff, to Vine, and now we have reached to this point where it's like everyone's trying to compete with each other, everyone's trying to make a better video and stuff. And I think this question, definitely, yes, overstimulation would never go away because we have content creators that want to be the big next thing on YouTube or TikTok. or kick.
Common knowledge dictates that we want constant stimulation because we're seeking quick hits of dopamine. We're all addicted to this so-called pleasure chemical, and every time we find a funny video or an arousing image, we get our fix. Then we go back for more and more and more and more until infinity. This idea ties dopamine and self-improvement up in a nice little clickable package. Influencers and whoever can tell you that the key to improving happiness is by resetting your dopamine.
See, he talks
Simple.
about it.
That's easy, but it's not totally true. Truth is more complicated. Dopamine is not released as a pleasure chemical. Dopamine is fired off before the pleasure is experienced as an anticipation chemical. The reward is not really relevant to dopamine release. Evolutionarily, this is intended to help with a try again mentality. If you're hunting and you miss your quarry, dopamine ensures that the attempt itself encourages you to try again. Scientifically, near misses actually produce even more dopamine than getting your desired result. Say you got $5 every time you...
Sorry, that explains gaming addiction, especially League addiction. You know, the reason why some people could never quit League even though they complain so much. It's because they keep thinking, you know what? One more game, one more game, one more game. I just need one game to reach maybe plat 4. Oh no, I lost this game. Never mind, it's okay. I have two more games. I win one, lose one, win one, lose one. And I think that's a system that a lot of companies realize. And I sort of deem it as a predatory approach. Because that's how they lock their players into constantly playing their game.
pressed a button. Anticipation of each $5 reward would release dopamine. But then imagine if the button started giving you $100 for each press. You would get even more dopamine for a little while before eventually declining back down to the $5 dopamine level, despite still getting $100 on each press. At that point, if the button switched back to $5 bills, your dopamine levels would decline even further to a place below that original $5 level. If dopamine was a pleasure chemical, you would get X amount of dopamine for the $5, then more for the $100, then right back down to X for the $5. But that's not what happens. The $5 button loses its ability to create dopamine as it becomes your new baseline.
Yeah, sensitized.
This shows that dopamine is not tied to the intrinsic value of the reward, but the difference between your reward and your default state. $5 is only nice, basically until you have $5. So think about taking a walk. A walk provides a reward compared to our baseline of staying inside. It used to, anyways. Just walking outside in nature, alone in silence, was great for a while. But then we were offered a podcast we could listen to while we took our walk. That's even better. So we did that until that got boring. But then we could scroll through TikTok while we listen to a podcast while we take a walk. That's amazing. But now taking a walk, maybe our $5 button, is shockingly boring. Unfortunately, this has no end. The human brain is not wired to find satisfaction. Because of our dopamine systems, as we consume more, we actually desire more. It's perhaps one of our most fatal flaws. So eventually we have to be constantly stimulated because
Then again, as much as this is a disadvantage, right? It can be an advantage as well. I'm not saying that humans should be masochists to be able to use this to our advantage, but I think from an evolutionary standpoint, right? How humans came from, I don't know, from the beginning of time until now, right? From the first existence of humans period until now, I think dopamine played a major role in that. Being able to accomplish something big and then wanting to strive for something even bigger than that. That's how we managed to reach this point in time. Just like what I mentioned, the whole like content creation thing is the same thing over again, just in a more specific field.
our attention spans are getting demonstrably shorter. Anecdotally, I think we could all probably agree with this. But there have been numerous studies that prove this phenomenon more scientifically. Indeed, our attention spans have gotten shorter as the amount of information in the world has grown. We only have so much real estate available in our minds, but now there are endless acres of information to consume. The problem is that instead of just ignoring some stuff, we are convinced by ourselves, our peers, or culture at large to just fit everything into our brains. We are told by any number of these sources that we have to care about every single news item and current event. This is our modern obligation. This is FOMO, the fear of missing out. If we aren't up to date on everything, we are cruel or soulless or ignorant or all of the
And that's
above.
the
But at the
problem
same
that
time,
social
we still
media
have our
created.
actual personal interests. There's endless information at our fingertips about things we genuinely do love. And why bother living if we can't pursue the things we enjoy? So we slowly decided to just make room for everything. In this amount of time, the real estate of our mind cannot and has not grown. Instead, it's just been divided into smaller and smaller pieces with every passing day.
Yes.
When we pair this concept with the idea that the more we consume, the hungrier we get, it becomes really easy to understand why we all need constant stimulation. But still, there remains one last piece of the puzzle. It was thought that technology would lighten our collective load. Robots, systems, computers, they were going to take some of the baggage off of our hands. But in reality, these things have taken our baggage only to replace it with, well, other baggage. Technology has relieved us from a physical workload, but replaced it with a spiritual exhaustion. It has taken physical distance and replaced that with a new kind of division.
Also, I don't remember when this video came out, but we also had that lockdown period, the period where felt like forever, but at the same time felt very short. A period where some kids that grew up during that period never get to grow up properly, which probably is also a contributing factor to why we're experiencing such incidences occurring frequently.
Armed with all of the information in the universe, we were supposed to be absolved of ignorance. Instead, there is ignorance like never before. We are forced to grapple with the effects of a failed promise brought on to us by a technocratic government, a capitalist system, and indeed, our own selves. I can't sit here on YouTube and seriously advocate for the downfall of modern technology, but I just wonder, when we get to a point where technology does more harm than good, how will we know? I don't have an answer to that question. Deep societal changes can happen slowly over time in a large-scale way. That's how we got here. We can recognize issues, vote based on these issues, and solve our problems together. But today, as an individual, right now, you cannot change the system you are facing. But you do have power. You have agency, because you can change how you function within that system.
I think that's it for this video. This video is pretty nice, to be honest with you. It's a video that I think all of us need to watch every once in a while, as a reminder. Especially in this day and age when we are constantly overstimulated 24/7. Yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and catch you next time. Stay safe.